Welcome to the FTD webinar titled, Busy Isn't Profitable, 10 Truths That Changed My Flower Shop. We are excited to welcome today's featured presenter, Tina Coker AIFD, owner of Designs of the Times Florist. We have two quick housekeeping notes. First, check out the handout section on your GoToWebinar control panel to download a PDF of today's presentation and other resources. Second, Tina will be answering questions throughout the webinar. Simply type your questions in that question box on the control panel. Okay, let's get started. Welcome, Tina.
Thank you, Janet. Hi, everybody. I'm glad you're here. I've owned my shop for about 43 years, and today is a chat, and it's not about how perfect things were. It's about the struggles I faced, the mistakes I made, and the lessons I wish someone had told me when I was first starting out. So if you're overwhelmed or feel like everyone else has it figured out except you, welcome. I'm glad you're here. You're not doing it wrong. I know so many florists who are incredibly talented, but they're also exhausted, underpricing themselves, and quietly wondering if they made a mistake opening a flower shop. What I'd like you to know today, and it's very, very important, is that most struggling florists are not failing because they lack talent. They're struggling because no one's taught them the business side early on. So today I've included a few industry financial metrics to help you move closer to better profits. And if anybody has any questions about these percentages, Janet, if you could, I'll entertain those or we'll move on.
Absolutely. No questions.
Okay, great. Then let's get down to the real great stuff. Oops, I would if it would move. There we go. Busy doesn't mean you're profitable. I remember years when the phone never stopped ringing. The cooler was full, we were exhausted. I thought that meant we were successful. But at the end of the year, there was almost nothing left. And that was the moment I realized being busy and being profitable are two separate things. As an example, one Mother's Day, we were completely overwhelmed. The largest school in our area had scheduled a prom on Mother's Day a weekend. We normally do 200 corsages plus boutonnieres. We had 3 weddings that weekend and 5 funerals. All of that was wrapped up in a major holiday. I remember thinking, if this is success, why do I feel so behind? It prompted me to take a real hard look at why. The following slides are a brief overview of what difficult lessons and choices I learned early on in my career. Excuse me, I'm trying to stifle a cough. Most florists don't underprice because they're bad at business. They underprice because they're afraid. But here's what I learned. People don't leave because of the price. They leave because they don't understand the value. The first time I raised prices, I expected backlash. Instead, nothing happened. And that's when I realized that I had a fear. And that fear was bigger than the reality. And to give you a great example, and I used to preach this all the time, again, a Mother's Day weekend, because it's our nightmare weekend. A ticket came onto my design table and it was for an order for $300. So I filled it. The problem was I didn't read the ticket close enough and it was for 2 arrangements at $150 each. So doggone it, slide it across, I go get 2 vases and I start $250 arrangements. I filled them tall, beautiful, gorgeous arrangements. And then as I went to go mark the order done in the computer, I realized that the customer name, I realized that I knew them and they live on a boat and they always order expensive arrangements, but they always want it squatty because they're on a boat. I want it compact. And so I filled it for the 3rd time with 2 $150 compact designs. there's nothing I could do about it. So I put all 3 expensive arrangements in the cooler and kept my fingers crossed that they would sell. It was Mother's Day Sunday, and what surprised me was within 45 minutes, all 3 of those sold. And at that time, our average order was $80. That fear of putting a $300 piece in my cooler kept me from getting higher prices for my talent. And you can bet you now that constantly there's at least the minimum, at least $150 arrangements. Now, I don't want you to think that, oh my gosh, she must sell, you know, really high end. Honestly, if you take a look at my website at some point, you'll see we have things on there for $69.99, $49.99. But giving the client the option to buy bigger and better is, to me, a sound business practice, and that's why I put it in this presentation today. This lesson is a difficult one for me, and that is some of your most gorgeous arrangements, because let's face it, when you go into this business, it's because floral design feeds your creative soul. We have a tendency to build designs from emotion. We make what we love and what our customers respond to and what feels artistic. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. That's what gets me up and into work every morning. But I eventually learned that something very difficult, and that was that most of the requested designs that I absolutely loved and created, they were not necessarily the most profitable ones. And for the following reasons. You know, they sold great. These customers absolutely loved them. This first one, which is called Radiant Meadow, I just thought I was so genius because I had an order come through and the customer wanted something different and wanted it very organic. So I call this my use it up, wear it out, make it do or do without arrangement. If you can see the orange at the top of the screen, those are actually Gerbras, but they came in bruised. So I peeled the petals off and it created a different type of flower. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm using up everything in my cooler that was damaged. And, you know, wonderful and great when it got finished. And I took a picture of it. You know, the team decided, oh, that's a great bouquet. We should put that on the website. So we put it on the website. The problem was we put it on the website at like $125, thinking that was a great price. Well, the reason it wasn't a great price was because there were too many varieties and too many insertions. And so it quietly, when we got this order in, which for a while, probably when we first put it on the website, we would get an order for this maybe 2 to 3 to 4 times a month. And so if we had run out of the pincushion protea picture there, we'd have to buy them off market. So that made it less profitable than some other of our designs. You know, again, everybody wanted these arrangements, but it also took too long to make because there were too many insertions. Another example of this is this one is called Woodstock. The problem with this one is it has difficult mechanics. So when I created this, I was just playing one day. We were creating our fall collection and we had a little leftover curly willow. So I took the curly willow and wreath and ran a little bit of it around the vase and then up over the vase. And then I accented it with the Italian ruscus and the olive branch, which grows in our backyard. And great design. Again, put it on the website. The first month it was up, we probably sold 30 of these. But it was so difficult for our team to construct. The mechanics were time consuming. And so again, one of those things that it's a great design, but we didn't make as much money. Now, we raised the price on both of them. So now we feel very comfortable with the fact that if it has too many insertions or it has difficult mechanics, we're paying for our time with that. The reason I've got the ineffective use of bunch, over the years, and so many years, I like to flower buy, I do, but it takes a lot of time. So we actually have standing orders. And whenever we create things for our website, we use from our standing order. That way I don't have to outsource it, buy it off market. And so that standing order saves me time ordering so that I only have to order what I need that week, what I see in the queue for that week, and whatever yummy stuff that we want to bring in for that week. And so whenever we create bouquets, we make sure that generally there's a 10% loss, things get bumped, cremones get bumped and the petals fall off. So that's only going to give you 9, that's that 10% loss factor. And so if we did use cremones in a bouquet, we would only use 3, thinking we can get 3 arrangements out of that. So that's what that ineffective use of bunch counts. On an everyday basis, it's not as important as it is to us on holidays. At holidays, we want to make sure that we use the product that's shipping in effectively. And so we pay close attention to that ineffective use of bunch counts. My general philosophy, and I love the creative designs, and so I'm not really saying don't show your creativity. I believe in that. I believe that's what sets us apart. That's why people come to flower shops, is for that creative touch. But whenever we're creating designs for our website, and we know it's going to be a seller, maybe because of the price point or the product is trending, we generally will choose classic flowers, and that's classic flowers to me is a nice way to say standard or cheap flowers. And we'll use 3 to 4 varieties, and then we add a touch of texture. And usually we'll get a 5 to 6 time markup on it, where something like Woodstock or Rainbow Bright, we're only getting a 3.5 to 4 time markup on it. Clear policies. This is hard for me because I, grew up in a different generation where we say, oh, yes, ma'am, yes, be happy to do that. But policies are not really about being strict. They're about protecting your peace and your sanity. If something isn't written down, it becomes negotiable. And when everything is negotiable, you slowly burn out without realizing it. Worse, if you're unnegotiable with one client, and their next door neighbor calls and they're expecting you the same treatment, you actually lose the client's trust due to lack of consistency. So policies are really about consistent answers and consistent way of doing things. And so I believe in policies, but again, I have labels on my linen closet. So where this came to serve me was really, really early in my career. I want to say like 87, 88. And my shop had only been open for, 5-6 years. Every order I wanted to take, I felt like I needed to take those orders. And I had a bride who spent 6 months worth of weekly calls and at least once a month stopping by to visit me. And at that time we carried a lot of rental stuff, whether it's table centerpieces, containers, etc. And so after 6 months and probably maybe, 40, 60 hours with this bride, she ended up renting like 4 plants to the tune of like, I want to say $60. So that's when we created a policy about consultations, and that consultation, there is a fee every time you want to chit chat, and we tell them right up front about that. And that was the best example I could come up with where policies can really kind of help you, save you with your time, not your time management, but people taking up your time when they really shouldn't be. This one, not every customer is your customer. This one took me years and years and years and years, and sometimes I feel like I'm still in that learning process. I almost feel like I should form a 12-step program to solve this thought process in my brain, because you love what you do and you want to do it for the people, your clients. But it's hard to realize that, again, not every customer is your customer. And I think of this as like a 2-sided process. The first side of it is more like you should know your business model, your type, and your personality. And I always like to give this, when I was traveling, I always like to give this as a suggestion, is that the basic flower shop, which would, to me, they carry classic designs. They have a great value, but they have a low service model. And I named that one Floral and Hardy. And then the next one, which is a little bit more artsy, they have moderate price product. And they have very simple service offerings, but they still have service. And that one's the loan arranger. And then, of course, my favorite, needless markup, which is more of an artsy, more of, you go in there to select a piece of floral art. And it's expensive, and they provide white glove service. And when you know the personality of your shop and your target market, it makes it very easy to do pricing and everything else around that, whether it's your policies, all of that forms around who you are as a florist. Now, I don't think, one of my shops fits into that loan arranger, and then I kind of sometimes think we're the needless markup, but and then sometimes we're floral and hardy. So there are going to be different times and different ways that you fit into these, but knowing what service you offer in that, like floral and hardy, we carry cash and carry. People drive through our drive-through every Friday night, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Our drive-throughs packed, where they come and grab a grab-and-go bouquet, at $10 to $20, and they don't have to get out of their car. So in that sense, we're kind of floral and hardy, but on the other side of it, when we provide service, we're needless markup. So whether you're tailoring a product, know the personality and your business model and what services you want to offer, and that's when you'll be able to target the customers that will fit your store better. One time I was on a plane going to some design show, and the guy that sat next to me worked in, automation. His company sold equipment kind of to automate, kind of like Ford Motor Company, that do assembly line. And I, was fascinated. Oh, that sounds really cool. What do you do for the company? And he says, well, I'm in marketing. You're in marketing? You have to market for that? And he goes, yes. He says, we can profile our top 100 customers, and with about 87% accuracy, because they knew what their personality was, they can capture other clients that meet that same demographic or business needs. So that's why I think it's really kind of important that you kind of profile who you, or decide who you are, and profile your customers so that you can target the customers that you actually need to build your business. The other side of not every customer is your customer is that difficult customers, they don't want to work with you. They want to control you. And when you're young, when I was young and new or timid in business, it's very easy to think you have to say yes to everyone. There was a customer who made me question my talent. But letting that customer go or saying no to that order was one of the most freeing things I've ever done. There will be times, for one reason or another, when a customer isn't your customer. And for me, that's usually when, I recommend them to someone else that I think that's just a better fit. And that's exactly what I tell them. And, I just don't think we're a good fit for you. We can't offer you the service or the flowers or whatever you're looking for. I know that's a really hard lesson to learn, but again, it goes back to who are you, what's your business model, and in some case, just letting a difficult customer go. And I know we all have 100 stories of difficult customers, and if you've got one you want to chat about, please put it in the chat box, and I'm sure Janet will let me know. Hiring, we can't do it all by ourselves. Once I hired someone because they were fast when they came in for the interview, and technically strong. They had great principles and elements of design. It all looked good on paper. But once that person started and worked for us, the energy in the shop completely changed. The people that were already there changed a bit as well. They were less productive, and the shop just felt hard to be in, honestly. In later years, I've hired someone slower, but if they were kind, calm, and willing to learn, then the entire shop improved. And so many people think it must be so much fun to work in a flower shop, and I consistently receive 5 to 10 resumes a month. And how I filter them out is I send them a one-page questionnaire. It has 5 questions. And that's how I gauge how they think and the words that they use. It allows me to kind of filter out those that I know that aren't going to be a fit for our company culture. And then if I tell them that it's a lot of grunt work, if they're worried about that eliminates them right away. And then when they come in for the in-person interview, and you ask them about their previous jobs, you can kind of figure out, how they talk about previous employers or people that they used to work with, if they're going to be nice or kind. And I got corrected today. Kind is much better than nice, because you can be nice like you want something, but kind is much better, because you'll know those are the people that when kids come into the flower shop here, I don't want to have to teach my staff to walk in the cooler and get them a little flower. I want that to be a natural reaction to how we do things here. And so that's what I look for when I'm looking for attitude and not necessarily speed. I feel like I can teach anybody to design, but I can't teach them how to be kind. All right, well, that control enthusiast describes me to a T. And sometimes I feel very bad for my team at both stores because I am such a control enthusiast, or control freak, whichever word you want to use. But the reason I am is because control feels safe in the beginning, but eventually it turns into exhaustion. A real business is something that can function even when you're not there every second. In 1990, I started doing design shows. Between shows, consulting, and industry function, I was gone about 26 weekends a year. And I often think now how I did that, but I accomplished it with specific steps. One of those was I had a very robust team training program, and I had very simple processes. People didn't have to remember 25 steps to do something. I had automation via technology. So if I wanted the plants watered every Monday, I created a ticket in my POS system that popped out that said water plants on Monday. So technology helped me to kind of keep the team cohesively on the same as if I was there or if I was not there. And I have to tell you that the first time I stepped away and things still worked, that was the moment that I realized I finally had a business and not just a job. Trends fade, fundamentals last. I love social media, and I need the 12-step program for that. I'm constantly scrolling Instagram and Pinterest, and we're creative people. We're visual is what we do and what we love. So, but the thing about social media, it makes trends look urgent. It makes it feel like you have to keep up or you're going to fall behind. But to me, the florists that I know who last the longest, and they're not necessarily the trendiest ones. And that doesn't mean that they do blasé, roundy-moundy, tuzzy-muzzy, huggable hump designs. That's not what it's about. What they employ is strong fundamentals with design. The use of color and texture and form. They have a strong sense of their own style. When you look at their site, you can see that all of their designs, they're not all the same, but they have that same feel to them, whether it's a high-end shop or a more casual garden shop. All of them have a personality and a strong style. And the thing that I learned a long time ago, because when you're designing and you're scrolling social media and you want to copy that. And I have to tell you, as an art major in college, that's how all the great artists, Renoir, Cézanne, all of them were, copied other people before they promoted their own style. So, or got their own personality. And I can't remember the exact quote, but it's always something about be the best you and not a copy of someone else. And even though I can't quote it properly, that has always stuck in my mind. So whenever I have florists who come to me to chat about their business, I'm like, promote you, not a copy of someone else. And social media has a tendency to make you want to feel like you need to, but don't. You have your own style. Each one designer in your shop has their own style, so promote that. That's when social media works best, when you're your true self, in my personal opinion. And consistency and quality does it look like the picture on your website? Have you trained your staff? And that's where the earlier picture I showed you about Woodstock, that's a hard design to make and hard for my staff to replicate. That's one of the reasons why it's a higher price. And I teach our designers here that if they're having difficulty when they're first learning, take a picture of it, because when you look at a photo, the photo will show you where the holes are or where it doesn't look like the picture. And in some cases, you've got the exact same recipe, but in our system, we put down this arrangement's 15 inches tall. And that a lot of times that's what's wrong when a designer takes a picture of it when they're first learning and they didn't read that it's 15 inches tall and it's 18, 19 inches. They cut it down to 15 and it looks exactly like the picture. So that consistency and quality comes from having that information at the designer's fingertips and training them to create the designs that are your signature designs. I think profitable designs are easy to do in your style. Again, you don't have to do little round moundies. You can come up with very unique things, and that's the beauty of our business is necessity is the mother of invention. When you need to create your style, play with the flowers and you'll come across it, and you'll know it when you hit it. Know your market and show your style. That is what builds your brand. And but the one thing you can never substitute is good mechanics, good care and handling so the flowers last longer. Rotation of your stock. We have a very specific rotation. We use those landscape flags, and each landscape flag means something different, so we know how to rotate. When we put an arrangement in the cooler, we put the designer's initial on the back of the price tag with the date, just a number. Like if it's today's the 24th, it would say 24 on the back and my initials. And so that way, once a week when we're going through the cooler, or if it doesn't sell, we know to remove it, and we're not going to send an arrangement out to a client that's been sitting in our cooler for 3 weeks. So rotation is really important to me, as well as understanding the principles and elements of design. And that's, to me, when you combine all those things together, that's what's going to grow your social base. Burnout doesn't usually show up dramatically. It shows up quietly. It shows up in exhaustion, frustration, and feeling disconnected from the work that you once loved. I often say that I never, even if it's a day that we're processing flowers, I never have a morning that I wake up and say I don't want to come to work, and because I love what I do. But there are times when I'm exhausted that it crosses my mind, should I call someone else in? And that burnout comes from a lot of different things. And almost every florist who stays in the industry long-term has hit that wall at some point. I can tell you in 42 years, I've probably hit it maybe 5, 6 times. And that's when you need a vacation, no matter how you do it. You have to close the shop early. But the way to mitigate that is to stop yourself from burning out before you get there. For me, is I take a look at my financials and price what you need to price so that you don't feel like you're working so hard for $1 a day. one of the interesting, and pricing such an interesting philosophy. One of the items that Janet uploaded is one of our recipe pricers. If you do want a copy of it, you can email me, or you can download the sample of the Excel. It's actually a PDF, but I do have the Excel. And but one of the interesting thing about pricing is find what pricing works best for you. We have, I went on Google Docs and built something that when I do a buy, it scans the pricing into our database, and it tells me exactly what the current market price on any given product is. So my staff isn't wondering what can I sell this for, or what's the price on this. And but I had early on this when I was in college, this business law professor, and this has always stuck with me. And trust me, I was in college about 100 years ago. He did a whole week on how attorneys are not really good business people, which surprised me. But he said that the way for them to stay profitable was to take all their expenses and then divide them by how many hours of work, how many, like they worked 40 hours a week. And that's what their billable hour was. And that concept has always stuck with me. I love the premise. If I knew how many arrangements I do a week in June or January when we're our slowest, or July, and I knew what my base was, then I would have a target of what I needed to sell or how I needed to price my flowers. I'm kind of still working on that process, but that premise has stuck with me all those years. Systems, they need to not be complex. I have hours of accounting I have to do, used to. Great thing now is my vendors send me an email to a QuickBooks account, and it automatically migrates it in. QuickBooks scans it in, puts the price in. I can click it and it says, save it, and then I click it and it says save and pay, and it gets paid. We had old Mercury, now we have Mercury HQ, which love because it links to my QuickBooks. So instead of waiting till 3 months from now to look at what I did in February, I click on it on a daily basis, and I can see where I'm sitting on my profit and loss statement, where I'm sitting on my cost of goods, and it helps me to plan where I don't have to do hours of extrapolating data and calculating it. Those are the systems I'm talking about, not necessarily financial, but even for flower rotation, as I mentioned before, we have a very simple process for that. Customer relations, we have our own, CRM, customer relationship management, again, done on Google Docs, and it's automated. Boundaries, my boundary is my time off. It's funny because when Janet tries to reach me, she knows that I'm never in on Monday. And I work usually, unless I'm in a project, and that's usually a passion project, I'm usually here 3 days a week, 9 to 6. And then my week, if I have weddings on Saturday, I'm here for the weddings. But boundaries when it comes to your time off, when you're pricing, or your team. And the team is what gets me, because you work with these people and they become family. And this last month, we have a policy where in QuickBooks you can do time off, request time off. Well, you want to say yes to everybody, but the policy is, 2 policies that we stick with completely, is there's no time off the week before a holiday or the week after a holiday. And the reason for that is that gives everybody a chance the week before so that we can schedule so we don't get overtime the week of. And then the week after is so that everybody gets a chance to rotate off after the madness. And so that's one policy. And generally I'll get, once every 5 years, someone who says, I want to be, off the week before Valentine's Day, and nope, it's in their policy manual. That's not acceptable. And that's why boundaries are good for that. They know that when they're hired, and there's no, crankiness about it. For me, design confidence is about continuing education. Every time, and I truly, truly believe this, when I used to do design shows for 25 years, there was always somebody in the audience who was my senior who had been in business, or their company had been there for 50 years or 100 years. And you often think, what in the world what can you teach them? What can you share with them that will help benefit their business? And I've come to realize after now I'm more of a senior person who's been in the business for 42 years, it's not really, when it's continuing education, if it's design especially, it feeds the fuel of design. You get excited about it. You can't wait to get home and try it in your own shop, whatever technique or design. But in addition to that, if it's mechanics or something along that line, and trust me, I've been to so many state shows, I can't even count them. I always come back with something. But it's the more important part of it is that I feel like every time you learn something new, it's a tool in your toolbox. And that, so you have all those tools in there, but sometimes if you reach 42 years in the business and you go to a design show, it's about somebody on the stage who takes out that tool and shows it to you again, and it reminds you that you've got that tool in your toolbox for when you need it again. So I think continuing education is very important, and it helps myself and my team be better at their jobs. When it comes to staff training, when we first started staff training, before I started to travel in 1990, they were simple PowerPoints with quiz, easy for y'all to do. We currently use a company called EdApp, and unfortunately they just sold, so we had just built our own platform. But that training, like EdApp, we'll train them how to take an order, soft skills, things along that line. And then it does a rapid refresh. So the week before Valentine's Day, they get, when they're learning, like if I was teaching someone the names of flowers, like someone coming in as an expediter, fancy name for flower processor, it teaches them, if they go in there and they choose, they see 4 pictures when they come into work, and one's an Alstro, one's a carnation, one's a dahlia, and every single time, and one's a bird of paradise. And every single time they know what the carnation and Alstro is, but they keep missing the dahlia and the bird of paradise. Well, if they get the carnation and Alstro correct, it won't ever send that to them again. But they'll continue to mix the dahlia and the bird of paradise in the training until they can identify it correctly. And so we use that and rapid refresh, which means before Valentine's Day, the staff will get a little class that says, this is what we're carrying. And that anything, if these are the 7 arrangements we're carrying, and anything that's a custom, which is not one of those arrangements where you're adding something to it, the price point starts at $165. And it'll tell them to remind them to ask for chocolates, ask for balloons. And so that training is invaluable. And if you can find some way to automate it, like I said, we used EdApp, but even if it's just simple PowerPoints or Reels, anything along that line that your team can view on a regular basis, again, go to Google Docs and automate, that being sent via email. But extremely important, it will alleviate a lot of the burnout that you feel. And to me, that's important, because that's a real thing in our industry. We're passionate people. I mean, if my husband didn't nag me, I'd be here 20 hours a day, but I have to set boundaries. I want to let you all know you don't need to quit. You just need better information. If you're struggling right now, it doesn't mean you're failing. It just means you're still learning the things that no one should have taught you at the beginning. If I could go back in time and help my younger self, I would not tell myself to work harder. I was already working as hard as I possibly could. What I needed wasn't more effort. I need better information. And if you're looking for more information, you can find a wealth of resources on FTD's YouTube channel, or go to ftdi.com under tools and resources, and download all kinds of information on pricing, things along that line that would be really beneficial. And of course, you can always email me or call me. I'm here to help. I talk to probably maybe 5 florists a month who call, to ask me different questions about their website, their accounting systems, design, photography, not my forte, know how to set up a picture, but not good at it. And that's a whole other story for another day. But if you do need something, reach out in your area. To me, it doesn't matter. The more information you have, the better it will feel every day when you go into work. And with that said, Janet, we can open it up for questions if you like.
I know you've had everybody just on the edge of their seats. No questions have come in while we're going. So thank you, Tina. That was awesome. I appreciate your candor and sharing, all your key learnings and things like that. So I'm sure everybody else did as well. So if anybody has any questions, we are open for any final questions. Simply type it in that question box in the control panel. While we wait, any final thoughts you have or a nugget to share?
That's a great question. I thought about that. The thing about being in the flower business is it's constantly changing. And I have found two things that are remarkable to me is when I bought the one of our branch locations in 2007, I realized I tried to employ everything that we did at the main store there. And that's where it really hit me about different markets react differently. And those were different customer base than what we had here at the main store. And where I found that information out, unless just as a little helpful hint, you can go to USP, the post office, USPS.gov/E is in Edward, D is in David, D is in David, M is in Mary. And that's every door direct mail. And you can find your area, put your zip codes in, find your areas, and click on any street. And it's going to give you demographic information that will allow you to kind of, help define what your market is and who your market is. It tells you how many people are in the household, what's their average income, things along that line. And I learned that when I bought that building or that store in 2007. The other thing I learned was some of the stuff that I used to do early on, I had abandoned as the store grew. Now, the branch location is a small store, and they probably do a quarter of what we do. The main store is much, much larger, and it's kind of an anomaly. Most flower shops have maybe a 10 to 15% walk-in. We have 40% walk-in here at this store. So we spend a lot of time on displays. But some of the stuff that I did when I first started out, the policies and procedures that I had, as we grew and grew and grew, those policies evolved to other processes and other things. And I have to say, since we moved, we just recently, within the last 3 years, built a brand new building, 7,000 square feet, 10 with storage. But I have reverted back to some of the things that we used to do early on. And so I think no matter who you are or what you're doing, your business evolves and you have to make changes. And how I make changes or how I decide to do things is if I call them pain points. If something is making me nuts, then I look for a way to solve that. And sometimes I look backward to how we used to do it to solve it. So our industry is ever evolving, and you, the people on this webinar today, are going to constantly being evolving. So if you go to a design show and say, that doesn't going to work for me, keep it in your notebook, because at some point you may find that it does work for you wherever you are in your journey.
Great, thanks, Tina. Yeah, questions are coming in. One thing to clarify, that website was www.usps.gov/EDDM.
I believe that's it. Or you can just you can Google United States Post Office every door direct mail.
Okay. Right.
It's a great marketing thing. If you don't have your own database, you can choose. It's inexpensive too. And there's companies that print them. Print the postcard or whatever direct mail piece you want to do, and they send it directly to the post office. You pick the carrier routes you want by looking at that map, and they'll send it out, the marketing thing out. So it's a great resource for both marketing as well as data information.
Okay, great. What was the name of the education app that you had mentioned?
What we currently use, and which unfortunately in 5 more days is going to be discontinued. It's called EDAP, EDAPP. They replaced it with something new, which was supposed to be better. But I knew that was coming because I received the information when the company sold, and knew that we wanted to create something of our own. But whatever EdApp is coming up with, you'll absolutely love it. Like I said, the platform is great. The rapid refresh is great. You can actually, when you sign up, you can send them, they have AI that'll create your class for you. But you can also, when you introductory offer, and I think it depends upon how many people you have registered on there. Currently, I think it costs us $39.99 a month. And for education, I think that's a great bargain. But they bill by how many people you have signed up in your thing. And when you first sign up, a lot of times if you give them, the first one that we did was how to make a boxwood tree. I wish I could, you know, Janet, how I said I didn't want to do a poll. I wish I could do a poll by how many people hate doing boxwood trees. But the class, the first one that we did was how to do a boxwood tree, and they actually created the app for us, or created the class for us. And you can do classes. We have a floral expediter, which is our processing. We have a sales class. And it's not one class, it's several classes. They're short, concise. It takes a team member about 3 minutes to get through a class. And when they teach you something new, then right as soon as you teach it, they go back and they ask you a question. So that reinforces the fact that you understood the concept. It's a really great program. I love it. I just needed something that was a little bit more automated. You can also automate it so that when your team does the classes, they can get points to redeem for like an Amazon card or a Starbucks card.
Okay. All right. Let's see. Jessica said, what I was asking, what were your 5 questions for the people that you send for the people when they send in your resume, you send them the 5 questions?
Oh, great question. I love that. My brother used to think this was so mean, but that I'd question people before I even interviewed them. But if you're interviewing for a driver position, it gives you a map and tells you have 5 stops to make, and it dictates which ones are like express deliveries or funerals or things along that line, and asks you to map them in order. If you're applying for a sales position here, then it asks you questions like, if someone comes in and wants a dozen yellow roses and we don't have a dozen yellow roses, what would you recommend and why? It also asks you if the total of the order comes to, I have to remember the math on this. I think if it comes to $29.50 and someone gave you $30.50, what change would you give and what denomination? And you won't believe the amount of people that would say, well, do I get a calculator to do this? That's probably someone you don't want handling your money. Even though most things are automated these days. Off the top of my head, I can't remember. There's other questions, but if you email me, I'll send you a copy of the quizzes. I'm happy to do that.
Okay. And Jill was asking, can you go back to what or how you put items in Google Doc? I don't know if you mentioned that. I think you just mentioned that you use that.
Google, if you go to Google, I'm an Excel person, honestly. When I pack to go to AIFD Symposium, I use an Excel sheet, and everything I'm going to wear in each day goes its own Ziploc bag with a little card that says this is what I'm wearing Monday. So I have lived in Excel for my whole adult life. And then, so Google Sheets, I didn't mean Google Docs, I misspoke. Google Sheets is what we use now because I can use ChatGPT to pretty much give it, have it do whatever I want it to do. And if you go to Google Sheets and start a sheet, you can ask it, I'm trying to think of the term. I wish I could see if I can pull this up real quick. Nope, I can't. Sorry, I lied. But if you go to Google Sheets and start, you're just going to ask it to do certain processes. Like for me, I would say when I complete this buy sheet, I want you to transfer to match the SKU from the buy sheet to the database and update the price per stem. And it does a calculation, the price per stem with a freight, so it's got that total dollar amount in there. Then when I'm finished with the buy sheet and they've received the product, they mark it received in Google Sheets, then it pops up and it says, do you want me to print out your labels now? Or do you want to select the labels you want to print? And then you select the flowers that you bought that you want to, like for us in the front display cooler. Then I click that and it migrates it kind of like to a Word document that sends it to our label printer. And our label printer prints out a label with the name of the product, the price, stem price, and the bunch price. But ChatGPT is a wonderful thing, and it will do all that for you. If you need more information, please don't hesitate to email me, and I'll send you copies of what we have.
All right. Thanks, Tina. She said, thank goodness she uses Excel too. So.
Yeah. Is it not Power Query? I never remember the name of it. A lot of that stuff you can do in Excel really, really well. And you can use ChatGPT to do it. So you can do the same thing in Excel.
Okay. Now we're getting to the couple of hard questions. Or no. Just asking like how you fill FTD orders with the price when it's the recipe, you know, here's what, you know, is the price for the flowers. How does that work, or how does that work with your spreadsheets and pricing in that?
Well, what you don't see on the spreadsheet that I uploaded, the PDF, is there is a separate worksheet attached to that spreadsheet, which is attached to our current buys. And so classic flowers, carnations, alstroemeria, cremones, lilies, snapdragons, solidago, Monte Cassino, bird of paradise, pochia. A lot of that stuff we have on standing order, so that price does not vary. But the price list gets updated all the time. And so when we calculate, and I'm hoping I'm answering the question correctly, what we look for when we fill an FTD order is we look at the height and we look at the recipe, and that's what we're filling. And I kind of touched on that briefly with our team when they're learning to design about that height issue. And having shot the selection guide years and years and years ago, I can tell you the designers that shoot that have very specific parameters to do. We need to make sure that all those flowers are generally available anywhere in the continental US and Canada, I believe, if I remember correctly. It's been 20 years since I think I've shot. But when it says it's 15 by 14, that's exactly what you want it to do. That's not going to save you if the alstroemeria are not open. And I think that's easily explained to a customer that, you know, well, it's gonna develop. We want you to have it for as long as you possibly can. But follow those recipes. One of our classes is about substitution here at the store, and if you do have to substitute, just keep in mind that color is the first thing that people see. And so if it had orange roses and yellow alstro, and you have yellow roses and orange alstro, that you want to switch those up, but you also want to keep them in the same percentage color. And then the next thing is making sure the height matches, and then the form of the flower. If it's an open form flower like a lily, you want to substitute with an open form flower. If it's a linear flower, you want to substitute with a linear flower. And our Merritt Island location, years ago, FTD had contacted us about a class for substitution, and we talked about it for a little bit of time. And our Merritt Island store had, they had never seen a satisfaction rating as high as that store. And that's because we drill that into our designers day in and day out with that education. Does that mean that I'm never going to get a complaint? No, that's unrealistic to believe that. But if you're looking for helpful hints, um, substitute flowers based on color, form, and shape, and make sure that you closely adhere to the height requirements. I'm hoping that answered the question.
Well, we got a little bit of clarification because the question was kind of more of, you know, making the order. How do you make the order with the amount? You know, because the recipe, FTD's recipes are, you know, standard pricing for all the flowers and that. So how do you make that order with the amount that is given or
so
listed in the recipe
okay, I get it. I'm sorry.
versus the flowers for the arrangement?
Yeah, and that's difficult. And honestly, I'm not the poster child for that because I am 2 hours away from Miami, and we have a wholesale division, so that's a no-brainer for me. And so I'm not sure I have a good recommendation for that, except for if you can't fill it in the price and it's not profitable, then I would do a price request or pass on the order, honestly. The good thing about filling FTD orders, and it's not because I'm here talking about FTD, is that if you think about it from the standpoint that they are paying the marketing costs to get the order to you that you would have to pay, then part of that cost of that bouquet could be written off in marketing. If you think of it from the standpoint of getting your work in someone else's home, I can't tell you the amount of the times that I have received a call that said, oh, you sent me a birthday bouquet. I loved it so much. I want to send flowers to so-and-so. Well, now I've got a new customer and it's my job to promote and market to them direct. So it's not a one-sided answer at all. And unfortunately, like I said, I'm a wholesale, I have a wholesale division that we buy from, you know, that our store, you know, right in the back of the store, there's a wholesale department. So it's a little bit easier for me. And even if I was a wholesaler in Topeka, Kansas, I'm still at a better advantage price-wise than y'all are because I'm 2 hours away from Miami.
Okay, thank you. All right, I'm sorry, my questions are moving on. All right, we're in the hard question. So so which FTD designs have you found that are the most profitable for your shop? So they're asking about like clear skies, and that doesn't ring a bell for me. I don't know if you would even know what that is.
You know, the ones that I can tell you the ones that I love and I think that are profitable and profitable in the way that we get more clients are, I can't tell you how much I love that. What is that vase? The what is it, Janet? Remember I bought like 40 cases when we were at Symposium?
The cinch vase?
Yes, the cinch vase. We buy them now for our own things, and I don't know, they're profitable for us because we use them for our own designs. And again, I think the ones that are the most profitable for us are the ones with the fewest insertions and only 3 to 4 varieties of flowers.
Okay, so that keeps your labor and everything down too. Okay.
And if you do fill a lot of FTD orders, then, you know, to me, the best way to handle that is do kind of what we do, which is standing orders. If you're in an area where you're a primary filler for FTD or you do a lot of FTDs, then make sure that your standing orders contain stuff to make the clear skies. And track that, you know, in January, June, you know, September, your slowest months, and plan on that and do your standing order. I'm a firm believer in that. I mean, we have glassware on standing order, and we probably pay 30% less than every other florist in here because I guarantee that I'm going to order that quantity of containers and that quantity of flowers every single month.
Yeah.
And it does help you control your cost.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Awesome. I think that's it. I think we're good.
Wonderful.
Thank you, everyone. No, and we're right at time.
We're
right at time. That's fantastic. So
Well, Janet, thank you so much for allowing me to chat with my fellow florist. I appreciate it. And again, my offer stands. If you guys ever have any questions or need anything, please don't hesitate to reach out. I'm here to help.
All right. Yeah, thank you. And thank you everyone for joining us today. A recording of this will be available on demand on the FTD Mercury Network Florist YouTube channel. And for more education programming from FTD, please visit ftdi.com to register for those upcoming free webinars and design shows, and to view the past education programs on demand. Thanks, everyone.